Hi, today I want to share some ideas of what to try on a melody if you think it needs improving. I'll use this pop flavor track to demonstrate. Now, even if that's not your cup of tea, the principles still apply to most any style of music. Also, I want to say that none of this is tied to the Deluge as an instrument, so go ahead and try some of this on your next composition for a bagpipe ensemble. I will nonetheless explain how to do things specifically on the Deluge, so you can maybe pick up a trick or two on the way. So let's get right to it. I'll use this flute-like synth for my melody. The scale is set to minor and the lid pads on the very right indicate where the root notes are. I've got this simple beat already prepared. I'll put a very simple melody on top of it, just one note per bar. This works, but I don't like how there are no pauses. Also, the middle two notes almost sound like one long one because they are the same. I shorten the second and the fourth note to divide the melody into two short phrases. It still sounds pretty stiff. I'll place a couple of approach notes in front of each long note. They are all ascending, approaching the next note from below. Now this seems too repetitive a pattern to me. I will change it so the approach to the second and the fourth note is descending from the previous note. I think composing is always about the right balance between regularity and contrast. This I quite like, but it's rhythmically pretty dull. I move the first note of the approaches 1/16 to the left. This time I thought ahead and only did it for bar 2 and 4 to avoid too much repetition. Now I want to create some movement in those long notes, by adding little trills or quivers or whatever you want to call them. With the synth set to mono, this is easily achieved by just adding a short note within the long one. It's not on the note I want it to be yet, and it's too long. I move it to bar 2, but I still have to make it shorter. By holding the left-right knob and pressing play, I can start the playback from the current screen. This shortcut I didn't know about for a long time, and it's a real time saver, especially when you're working on long sequences. I had to zoom in further so I could make a shorter note. This sounds more like what I had in mind. I move it slightly to the right. I'm gonna add a second one of these with a bigger interval. The fourth sounds cool. You could go full on the good, the bad, and the ugly with this. Try adjusting the portamento time for different results. I'm adding 2 of these in bar 4 as well. This time in the opposite order, the fourth first and the second second. It's still bothering me a bit that the main notes in bar 2 and 3 are the same. So I'll move the note in bar 2 down quite a bit. I like it, but the little quiver notes are not too far away. I'm gonna readjust them. I'm trying some different combinations, but eventually I'll go back to the second and the fourth I had before. I usually don't like it when all the main notes go on the one of a bar. But in this case it seems to work for me, because the bass is not playing there. So bass and melody complement each other nicely. The sustained notes in bar 1 and 3 are still kind of static. I will try adding some ratchets within them. I zoom in for this so the ratcheting will be fast enough. We can't really hear it because the notes just blend into each other. I'm adding a filter envelope so the beginning of a note becomes noticeable. This does the trick. I'm assigning the sustain of the filter envelope to a gold knob. It determines how open the filter will remain after the short attack and decay phase. I'm also assigning the modulation amount of the filter envelope to a gold knob. This way I can easily adjust how strong the effect should be. I could also bypass it easily by dialing it to 0. I'm adding another note to follow the bass pattern a bit more. I'm adjusting the 2 gold knobs. I want it to be a bit more subtle, so it doesn't sound like 2 individual instruments. I'm doing the ratcheting thing for bar 3 as well. I should add here that by using automation on the gold knob with the envelope amount, I could assign the filter envelope mod only to the ratchets and not every note. But I actually like it the way it is. It makes the notes pop a little more. Here I'm fiddling with the decay of the filter envelope. I actually decide to assign the decay to a gold knob instead of the sustain. The sustain knob does almost the same thing as the main cutoff control, so I don't necessarily need it. Next, I'll use the portamento to make the end of a long note dive super deep. Kinda like a tape stop effect. Now the portamento time is set too short and the ratchet notes pull it right back up. I get rid of the last ratchet note. And I place the low note a little further to the right. Now it stays on the low note, but the portamento is still too quick. I'll use automation to assign a longer portamento time to just this note. Otherwise it would mess with my quivers. Now I have to fix bar 3 as well. The placement is fine. I'll automate the portamento time here as well. I'll move it down 1 more octave. Because of the long portamento time, it never actually reaches that note. I make the glide time a bit shorter. I think it still doesn't go all the way down, but that's okay. In the first measure, you can hear how the note jumps up again at the very end. I'm gonna fix that by making the high note a bit shorter. I also move the low note a little to the right so it doesn't occur right after the ratchet thing. I don't want them to be competing with each other. Next, I duplicate the clip. I'm gonna make an alternate version. It's gonna be rhythmically identical, but move upwards instead of down to build up energy. The approach notes are all going upwards as well. I basically just move along the scale now. For the last one, I decide to switch direction, thinking that maybe it's nice to somehow lead back down to the first note. Those passing notes as well are going to be descending. I have to make sure I got rid of everything I don't need. Now I'm missing that one low note in bar 3 for the dive. I'm not putting it back in. Instead, I'll add one in bar 4. Again, I'm thinking it can't hurt to mix things up a little. And also, this is where the melody starts descending again, so it makes more sense here. It stays too long on the low note now. I'll move it to the right. Still not good. I make it shorter. I decide to put it back up in the end by making the high note longer than the low one. I'm adjusting the glide time so it comes all the way back up. Good. I leave it like this for now. I'll duplicate the clip yet again for a different melody part. Just like within a melody, I think it's good to have some contrast between different song parts. That's why I'm going for a melody with lots of short notes now, instead of the sustained ones I used before. I'm trying to build off the other melody. That's why I'm deleting it as I go. This has taken me quite long, lots of trial and error. So I'll skip to when I'm all done. Here's what I ended up with. Let me point out a couple of ways in which this relates to the original melody. The ascending arpeggios at the beginning of each bar are a new element, but the very first note of each one is still the same. The descending notes after the arpeggio follow the rhythm of the bass. And the sustained notes at the end of a bar are a relic of the old melody. Maybe you noticed that occasionally I place two notes on top of each other. In mono mode with some portamento, this gives me this slight slur into the note. At the end of the 4 bars I went a bit off script. I have the melody going up and down at the same speed and added this little ornamental lick in the end. Every once in a while I think it's cool to do such fast phrases. People often say a melody is good when it's easily singable. I think there are lots of great melodies that are close to impossible to sing. I think the reverse, though, does apply. If you can sing a melody easily, it must have some qualities. I'm trying a lower octave. That would make it easier to sing it as well. One thing always worth giving a shot is moving an entire sequence to the left or right. You do this by holding the up-down scroll knob and turning the left-right scroll knob. Now I only moved it by a 30-second. This obviously sounds bad. Here's how it sounds 1/16 to the left. Better, but note how it's not in sync with the bass anymore. I move it further to the left. It's now offset by a dotted eighth. Because the bass pattern consists of a bunch of dotted eighths, it aligns quite nicely again, but with a whole different feel than before. Sometimes doing this can lead to really cool things you wouldn't have otherwise come up with. I particularly like doing this with vocals too, to break out of the habits of how a given singer usually phrases things. In this case, I'll go back to how I had it before though. With a busy melody like this one, I think it's best to keep it as close as possible to the bass. I think it's a good rule of thumb to have not more than 2 melodic things going simultaneously. Maybe 3 if things are really transparent. It's always tempting to overload the track. Because we know our own music very well and hear it many times while we're working on it, it's easier to follow many things at once with our ears, because we know they're there. I try to keep in mind that this is different for someone who hears my track for the first time. So I try to focus on the supporting cast instead of adding yet another new thing. For example, here with melody 1 and the bass line, I've got plenty going on. So here I've got some chords in the exact same rhythmic pattern as the bass. This should help to establish this rhythm even more as a musical idea. Let's hear it together with the bass. I'm adding reverb to the chords because I just love reverb. The pattern has nothing on the 1, like I mentioned before. But it locks in nicely with the beat, which is very basic, by which I mean it has no accents on any offs. Now when I bring in one of the melodies, it gets all of the spotlight on the 1 of each bar. But I know that's how I'm getting off track, so I'll stop here for today. Of course, melody is a huge topic, and I'm sure I'll get back around to it one of these days. Now I'm gonna put those 3 melody parts together in a little jam as usual. Ideally, I give you a new idea or two of what to try with the melody in case you're not happy with it as is. And if you are happy with your melody, the best piece of advice I can give you is to be confident enough to not change a thing. So, that leaves nothing more for me to say, but thank you a lot for watching.